Henry Jr., now aged 26, and John Donald, aged 21, set out from Mount Pisgah with a wagonette and equipment, and by 1892 some land was cleared and a house and a cowshed was built. Also in 1892, Henry Jr. married Edith Jones and bought the property Burnside, where 7 of his 8 children were born and went to the Hoddle Range State School. In 1907, ill health saw him move to northern Victoria, and he died 2 years later, aged 46. In 1910, Burnside came up for auction and was bought by John Donald, but he continued to work on his father Henry's farm for the time being. By 18, I'm just going to go 19 instead of 18, I've got to get in the right century. By 1892, when the railway was completed to Hoddle, Henry Sr. and his second wife, Christina, with 4 of their children, came to the Hoddle farm. And they all the children attended the Hoddle school. So the father and the son's children were at the school at the same time, and some of the children were born in the same year. So you had the generations there. And actually there's a photo up on the board there with the different load of children that were at the school, from the first generation and the second generation. So in 1908, Henry Sr. and his family returned to Midas, the family farm at Mount Pisgah. If I've got something wrong, Bill, tell me.
You're going well.
In 1911, John Donald married Mary Ann Letitia McBride. He was 42 at the time, so he worked on his father's farm until he was 42. And then he took up residence at his own farm, Burnside, which had been his brother Henry Jr.'s farm initially. After this, Cameron and Bert Loaders and Ted Stanfield managed Henry Sr.'s farm. John Donald and Letty raised their family of 6 children at Burnside, all of who went to the Hoddle Range School. All of his children stayed working on the farm until they married, and all settled locally at Hoddle, Fish Creek and Foster, and raised their families there locally as well. The fam Mandalay, is it? Mandalay? No? Mandalay, adjoining Burnside, was purchased and became Don's farm. And in 1953, Albie, another son of John Donald's, married Joan Davis and continued to farm Burnside until his death, and Joan's death in a car accident in 1976. So in 1953, Donald and Letty retired into Foster. Letty passed away in 1959 and John Donald in 1963, aged 94, and he was the longest living member of the family. So in 1953, John Donald and repeating myself, Cameron Loder married Olive Boland after the war, and Cameron he went to war in 1917, and as the letter, Bill has a letter there as well that was sent to the family members, and we've got the original copy there, that was sent to John Donald, and it was just saying that Cameron saw George 4 days before he was actually killed in the war. So the letter is there in that blue folder if anybody wants to see it. Where am I up to? And Cameron bought John Henry Sr.'s farm, the original Hoddle farm, after the war, and after his mother and father had died, he sold the farm and moved up north to Witchyproof to farm there, but drought years and all his family were born at Witchyproof. And the farm at Hoddle came back into his hands, and he moved back to Hoddle with his family in 1936. And so his children grew up with his, well, they'll be half cousins actually, and John Donalds. And Cameron sold the original farm of Henry Senior's again in 1940, and it has not been in Loder's hands again. Wait on. Oh, that's right. And later on, these are the other Loders that have been in and around Gippsland as well. So Marion Loder, she married Ted Stanfield, who was Ted Stanfield that came and worked on the farm in Foster, but apparently they come up from this area around here originally, from what I can understand. And Marion and her husband eventually settled at Poowong in Gippsland. They did have some other farms around different areas before they actually settled down there. And they raised their family there. And after Ted's death in 1952, Marion kept farming on the farm in Poowong with her youngest son, Alan. And Alan has just celebrated his 90th birthday in May this year. But apparently he's going along quite well. Marion retired to Druin in 1964 and died in 1974. Now another Loder that was down in Gippsland for a short time was Edmund Loder. He joined his brothers at Hoddle and found work cutting railway sleepers. And John Donald was the only Loder who remained in Hoddle for all his working life. All the others were just sort of passing through for a short period of time. And Neil Loder remains on the house block of 20 acres of Burnside, and Noel Loder now owns Donald's house of 2 acres. The main properties have been sold off, and I just want to say that Noel is back in Australia at the moment after spending all of his adult life overseas, so it's nice to see him back. And here as well. In 1964, Henry, the son of Samuel Henry, or Harry as he's known, which is in the school photo, and there's a little cutout which we cheated a bit and put beside each one of the ones that were in the school in the little circles. He came and settled on a farm in Leongatha and stayed there until his death in 1994. And Lucy Spear, his widow, still resides in Leongatha and lives independently, aged 96. And apparently Anne was just speaking to her last week and she's just given up a driving licence. So. Going to. Oh, have you? Oh, sorry, did you have that in too? And there was 25 of the first and second generation of Loders of Henry Senior's family that had lived at Hoddle at some stage. And I'd just like to say thank you to Helen for sending me the photos of the older generations. It was a big help. Where's Paul? I can't see it at the moment. Oh, and thank you, Helen. And also to Ken and my daughter. Ken for running around taking lots of photos and getting them printed off for me, etc. As I'm no good with the computer. And my daughter did all the labelling for me. And yeah, and as I said, when I started this, I didn't really realise there were so many Loders that had actually been at Gippsland at one time or another. And now Anne wants to have, Anne is going to have a little talk about the later generations, present day generations.
Yeah, so just to add a little of the present day with the Gippsland Loders. The family of John Donald and Letty Loder grew up on a dairy farm at Hoddle, halfway between Fish Creek and Foster.
Oh, that's what you were going to say. Yeah. We didn't bring a map with us, unfortunately.
Yeah,
but if everybody knows that little boot bit right down the bottom of Victoria, It's right down there.
That's where Fish Creek is and Hoddle. Yeah, so halfway between Fish Creek and Foster, and all married and live locally. We, the grandchildren, had many happy times amongst the rolling green hills of South Gippsland, the gateway to Wilson's Promontory National Park. And a lot of you would know where Wilson's Promontory is, so we're the last little area before Wilson's Promontory. Currently, only 3 grandchildren are still farming in the area. Today, the family of John Donald and Letty Loader that were married in 1911, from the 6 children, there are 19 grandchildren, 5 have passed away, 47 great-grandchildren, 1 has passed away, and 25 great-great-grandchildren, and still growing. Marilyn's already touched on Lucy Loader, but I'll just say this little bit. Also in Gippsland at Leongatha lives Lucy Loader, aged 96 and a half. She is the wife of Henry Loader, the grandson of Henry Junior Loader. Lucy has an amazing memory, but says her body is slowing down. So she has decided to give up driving her car. It hasn't actually happened yet, but she's decided on this. Well done, Lucy. The railway that went through Hoddle opened in 1892. The passenger train stopped in 1981. The goods trains went on to Barry's Beach until 1992. That made 100 years of the railway being opened. Today a coach runs from Melbourne to Yarram for passengers, and I quite often get on that to go to Melbourne. The Great Southern Rail Trail, which goes along the old railway, starts at Leongatha, 72 kilometres down the track, finishes at Port Welshpool, and they are extending it on to Yarram. This is a very popular track with walkers, cyclists, runners and riders, so a great tourist attraction. In honour of the Loader name, there is a walking trail starting at Mount Nickel, which is 7 kilometres from Fish Creek. The walking track has spectacular views overlooking Corner Inlet and the surrounding farmland. The trail has an interesting array of flora along the Hoddle Hills. See some more details if you're interested in the blue folder that Marilyn has set up. And that just about does it all, but I would like to thank Marilyn for all the hard work that she has put into this presentation and the board of photos. Hope you have enjoyed learning a little more of the Gippsland Loaders. Thanks also to Helen and Bill for giving us this opportunity. Thank you.
Good on the dearies.
Did I go too fast?
No, no.